All right, everyone. Welcome to council meeting for the extraordinary council meeting for the 5th of August 2026. If we could begin, please, with our normal karakia. Whakataka taho ki te uru, whakataka taho ki te tonga, kia mā kine kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. Hei aki ana te atakura, hei tio, hei hoka, hei hauhu, te hei Māori ora. Welcome to staff, welcome to members of the public, both online and in the chambers. We do have two councillors, one who is feeling under the weather and the other one who can't make it because of logistical challenges. So welcome Councillors Horowhenua and Councillor Gray. You can hear us okay? Cool, thank you. And we do have one member of the public who wishes to speak to us today, and that's Viv. Welcome, Viv.
Good morning all, how are you all today? Yes, thank you. Right, my content is on the second section of the agenda, which is about the regional council amalgamation and functions, and how we can serve the regional council functions, serve and help the Horowhenua community and environment better. The things that I'd like to see, if you do talk about it, is why isn't biosecurity and risk hazard being an active delivery model when talking to groups being applied, especially with the current climate change. I realise this is about the government adoption, but this is just my 2 cents worth, okay? Project overviews and risk fallout managements never seem to be calculated into things like the Horowhenua wetlands, walk, the pot and the landfill. We need risk aversion into these policies, if we can please. When we had the Lake Domain Board the other day, nothing seemed to be done about the Hokio stream, and yet I see in the integrated catchment committee agenda that came up last week, there's quite a bit about the Hokio work and also about the Horowhenua wetland. We need these subjects flowing through if we can, you know, rather than individuals. I'm going to cut out quite a bit of what I was going to say, but you know, an example of this would be the other month we had this come up, and Jeff Kane was trying to lease a piece of land that had already been leased out in the Horowhenua wetland for the Disabled Riding Association, but the wording that was contained in it really was very sad that Horizons even allowed this to happen. It's just nothing to do with the price of fish. Also, the landfill had a meeting the other day, and the NLG with the consent resource conditions, but the PMG members still feel as though they should have more status than the NLG, which once again, what needs to be amalgamation in there. Please, council members and Waipahu especially, work with the groups and not against them for a better environmental result. I realise this has nothing to do with the price of fish, but despite terrible pollution, no risk plans seem to have been included in any land management. That includes the landfill, the pot, both have increasing problems out there because of the growth strategy. Any questions?
Any questions for Viv? Councillor Mitchell-Kita.
Hi Viv, lovely to see you. Just want to say that environment is really important for me, and I know for many of us around the table. So I listen to what you have to say, and I truly support us caring for, looking out for, and managing our environment. So please know that it is not something that is not on the table and not something that we care about. And personally, I can speak for myself, it is absolutely very, very important and high on my. Appreciate you coming to speak about that, so thank you.
Thank you, Viv. All right, we have no late items. Any councillors have any declarations of interest for today's meeting? Okay, so moving on to the confirmation of the minutes. Recommendations are that the meeting minutes of Council 29th of July 2026 be accepted as a true and correct record, and that the public excluded meeting minutes of the same date be accepted as a true and correct record. Seconded by Deputy Mayor Allen. All those in favour? Against? Carried. So we know that we have a major item to discuss and debate today, and that is the Horowhenua Head Start backstop response. So I'm going to welcome Ashley to the table if she's ready. And Alison. All yours, Ashley. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Today marks a significant milestone in the Future Fit HDC program, and one of the most important decisions that Council will make. When the government announced the Head Start program on the 5th of May, this was not a part of Council's adopted work program. At the time, officers and elected members were already delivering an ambitious Future Fit program, focusing on long-term plan implementation, rates capping, and responding to a significant legislative reform agenda. This program of work was introduced with little notice and extremely compressed timeframe. It required Council to quickly reprioritise resources, bring together expertise from across the organisation, and work at pace to ensure elected members were equipped to make one of the most important decisions this Council may face. At our very first briefing, you acknowledged that challenge. You recognised the scale of the work already underway, but you also made it clear that this was not a decision you wanted to simply react to. You told us that if local government reform was coming, Horowhenua should be part of shaping that conversation. You wanted Council to demonstrate leadership, to understand the opportunities and the risks, and to ensure that whatever decision was ultimately made, it was based on evidence, robust analysis, and the best information available. You also challenged officers to ensure this process wasn't simply about responding to the government, but about understanding what was right for Horowhenua. You were equally clear about the principles that should underpin every piece of this work. You told officers that any future governance arrangement needed to enable growth of Horowhenua, consider impacts on services, scope, resilience and efficiency, affordability for community and council sustainability, and to retain local voice and identity. Those principles have been the foundation of the conversations, workshops and assessments. What has followed over the last 3 months has been an extraordinary program of work. We have commissioned independent analysis through Morrison Lowe. We have undertaken community conversation with a large number of responses. We have engaged directly with iwi, neighbouring councils and key stakeholders. We have participated in regional discussions, tested assumptions, challenged thinking and continually refined the information presented to you. Importantly, this has not been a single process. We have been actively involved in the Wellington Regional Work Programme, participated in Horizon regional discussions, worked alongside neighbouring councils as they developed their own priorities and positions, while at the same time designing and delivering a Horowhenua specific future fit process that placed our community, our evidence, our analysis, and our priorities at the centre of the decision-making process. Navigating these multiple work streams, all moving at different speeds and often evolving in real time, has added complexity. Throughout the process, officers have worked to ensure elected members received balanced, independent and timely advice while remaining focused on what matters most for Horowhenua. Perhaps the most important thing this work has shown is that there is no perfect option. Every governance option presents opportunities. Every option also comes with trade-offs. There is no option that delivers every outcome, satisfies every aspiration, or removes every risk. That is the reality of structural reform. Which brings us to the decision today. Today's decision is not about deciding the final shape of local government in Horowhenua. It is about determining how this council wishes to respond to the government's reform program. In essence, council has three strategic choices before it. The first is to participate in the government's Head Start process by submitting an outline proposal. The second is to adopt a hybrid proactive leadership approach, continuing to demonstrate leadership, narrowing future options and continuing to work collaboratively without committing to a formal Head Start process at this stage. The third is to wait for the government's backstop process, allowing the next phase of reform to be led by central government. Our responsibility as officers has been to provide you with balanced evidence and advice, and we have done that. This decision now sits with you. I will now hand over to the Chief Executive to make any final comments.
Thank you, Ashley, and good morning, Your Worship and Councillors. Further to that comprehensive introduction from Ashley, I want to acknowledge that as elected members, what we've been providing you in addition to the report in front of you is a live analysis of the decisions of our neighbours so that you can see the evidence and information in front of them, but also you can see the decisions that they have made. In addition to what we provided you as of yesterday, this morning Palmerston North City Council have met and I can confirm that they have adopted the front foot option of looking to pursue a leadership opportunity with Horowhenua District Council. You'll also note that yesterday Kapiti Coast District Council made a decision to endorse a proposal that would see Horowhenua and or Kapiti Unitary Authority as part of the wider Wellington regional framework. You'll note that both those options that I have discussed, first the front foot option, is an option available to Council in this report, but I want to specifically speak to the decision of Kapiti Coast District Council yesterday, which has endorsed an option that is not an option we have analysed for Council. You'll note that you have an option in this report which speaks to the Wellington Regional proposal as endorsed by the Wellington Mural Forum. The option that Kapiti have endorsed is an alternative option that as a council, you'll note within the report, we provide some analysis that we've not had an opportunity to actively participate in the shaping of some of the representation model that Kapiti have proposed yesterday. Officers are available to answer questions, noting that as elected members you really have done the heavy lifting on this. You've been part of multiple workshops over the last 3 months, but what I do just in wrapping up want to acknowledge is the incredible work from our team who have really worked hard to ensure that there is no stone unturned. Yes, we don't have all the answers for you, and yes, we don't have the perfect option that balances all the trade-offs, but I know that as elected members you have a significant amount of evidence and analysis in front of you to hopefully shape your choice and decision today. Happy to answer any questions, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any questions for the Chief Executive or Ashley or Elson? Councillor Mitchell-Kuto.
Can you please just clarify for me in terms of Kapiti? I'm still a little bit unclear about the front foot with Palmerston North. I'd love to learn a little bit more about what that means for us. And so if Kapiti has decided it's going to, and if I'm correct on this, stay within the Wellington region in terms of moving forward, does that mean they've completely cut out any option of working with us in the future if we decided to go with some partners north? And what does the front foot with Palmerston North mean? Is it open to allowing other councils to come and be involved in us in the future, just so that we can also explain to those listening a little bit more about it?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the decision from Kapiti yesterday is to endorse a proposal that would see either a Horowhenua Kapiti unitary or a Kapiti unitary, depending on the appetite of this table, that unitary would sit within the context of the broader Wellington regional framework. My understanding is that Kapiti are open to working with Horowhenua, but that is in the frame of the proposal they have endorsed yesterday, which is a connection into Wellington. I understand that we know that Kapiti are already part of the Wellington region, and while their preference would be to work with Horowhenua or be their own unitary, they see their connection to Wellington greater than they see their connection to Palmerston North. If I could comment on the front foot option, and obviously within the series of options analysed, the Kapiti Horowhenua Palmerston North option is an option which is pretty green and orange when we compare it against those principles or the eligibility criteria for the Head Start proposal. Now the front foot option firmly suggests that Horowhenua and Palmerston North are connected in a way where whatever proposal might be on the table, it forms the foundation of future conversations, but it absolutely looks to keep the door open to those where it makes sense. But what the front foot option does is rules out one single unitary for Horizons, because it eliminates some of the partners that might be within that. And as you know, elected members, you have shaped that thinking through the work you've done around the principles of decision making, with a particular emphasis on what you've continued to reiterate around community voice and identity and natural alignment with catchment.
Just to add to that, Kapiti had said that because they didn't engage with or consult with their community about the possibility of being part of a Horowhenua Palmerston North partnership, they wouldn't actually put that as an option. All right, so they dismissed coming further north than Horowhenua. Right. Councillor Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got two questions through the Chief Executive. First is, can you just confirm that in relation to the report that was presented to Kapiti Coast District Council yesterday, did Horowhenua have input, or were we consulted in relation to the content of that report?
Through Your Worship, so no is the short answer, but I just want to, so they have a cover report, but there are two proposals. So there is the proposal which the Wellington Mural Forum have endorsed, which is the proposal that's going to each of the councils in the Wellington region, including the proposal that you've got attached as one of your options today. And then they have a secondary proposal, which is a proposal that Kapiti have led the shaping and thinking on, and as per the description in the council report, that is not a proposal that we have had input or the opportunity to shape, nor one of the ones that you've had input into either.
And then just a second question, please. It had been signalled to me by one of our elected member colleagues up in Palmy that there might have been an amendment put on the table this morning around the content of the front foot letter as it's drafted. Are you able to confirm whether there was any amendments made this morning? I hadn't heard back.
Through Your Worship, I have a text message that says some amendments to letter, I don't know the shape of them, but what I understood off the back of some of the conversations elected members from Palmerston North had been having is it's linked to that catchment conversation, the acknowledgement around connection to whenua, connection to awa, and thinking about what other councils might want to connect into a front foot conversation and ensuring that there was the opportunity. But I can follow up within the time available.
Councillor Grimstone.
Yeah, it's a question from Monique, again, sort of exploring option 7 in particular, based upon the response given to Katrina's question earlier. Can you confirm that option 7 in particular does not commit Horowhenua to a unitary authority, amalgamation, or any specific other governance model today, and leaves the conversation open to evolve for a kapiti solution?
So correct. Option 7, which is the front foot option, is it's not a Head Start proposal. It's saying to the government, we've done all of this work, we've narrowed some options down, but we're not quite ready for a Head Start proposal. So it's not binding this council. Just the reason I paused, Councillor Grimstone, is just that second part of your question, which was, and it leaves the door open for kapiti. I think the Head Start proposal absolutely leaves the door open for the likes of kapiti, Tararoa, for example. What I can't be sure of is how Wellington councils will respond to kapiti's decision yesterday, which is to endorse a proposal that is not the proposal that has gone to the other Wellington councils. And we've got 4 days before Head Start proposals need to be submitted. It could be that the Wellington councils submit a proposal to government which includes kapiti, because that is what's reflected in the final proposal that is in front of those Wellington councils. Whether that leaves the opportunity for kapiti to request that they are opted out of Wellington and instead pursue an opportunity with Horowhenua and Palmerston North, I think that window of opportunity is still there. But if they are named in a Head Start proposal by Wellington councils, that really does now sit in the decision of government. Noting that part of what I understand the Wellington councils are considering, the proposal does recommend and support a referendum early next year, ahead of the kind of final May decision making.
Just to add to that conversation that I had with the Mayor of Wellington yesterday, assured me that they would not be including Horowhenua in their Head Start proposal either. Have you had the response? Yeah. Okay.
I can possibly answer more substantively, Councillor Jennings, and I may have, maybe Palmerston North is still deliberating, I don't know. The recommendations that is on the table at Palmy right now that potentially they're still deliberating is that they agree option 1, front foot. And now I think what they're deliberating is the substantive recommendations about the letter. And so it's that council agree the substantive content of the draft joint letter with Horowhenua, and that the letter clearly state Palmerston North's initial support for investigating a sub-regional body that reflects a cohesive and coherent catchment of the Manawatu Awa, with a focus on including neighbouring Manawatu and Horowhenua District Councils. That delegated authority, then some delegated authority recommendations.
Councillor Jennings.
Could I just make a process query then? That it's obviously going to be of benefit and importance that we understand where Palmy actually might end up on that language, so that we don't have sort of two concurrent processes. So, is it possible that if the debate, if someone puts a motion on the table and then there's a debate, that there could be some further conversation or further motion or debate around the content of the letter in the same way that Palmy has done, and that we perhaps seek a specific update from the Chief Executive post any debate on the substantive options, if option 7 is still even on the table, just so that we can check in at that point, so that we can clarify what decisions or what direction Palmy's gone in, because I think that would be of value to the table before confirming that we support a letter. That's obviously in our pack.
Through your worship, yes. And this is the complicated thing about the Local Government Act, right? We've got other councils making decisions where we're having to try sequence the right advice at the right time to elect members.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Alison. Appreciate that introduction as well. Well done. Okay, as I foreshadowed yesterday to councillors, I'm making a recommendation, moving recommendations A, B, E and F that council adopts option 7, the Palmerston North and Horowhenua front foot approach. So option A, recommendation A, the council acknowledges and thanks the community, iwi stakeholders, partner councils and all those who participated in the Future Fit HDC Head Start program for their time and contributions which have informed the governance options presented in this report. B, that council endorses the following representation principles to guide council's participation in the Head Start reform program and the assessment of any future governance proposals. Meaningful local representation, local decision making and subsidiarity representation that reflects communities of interest, demographic legitimacy and accountability and protection of local identity and community outcomes. E, that council resolves to adopt a hybrid proactive leadership approach to local government reform through the Future Fit HDC program. And F, that council adopts option 7, Palmerston North and Horowhenua front foot approach as its preferred proactive leadership Future Fit HDC pathway for progressing local government reform, and authorises the Mayor and Chief Executive to undertake the actions necessary to give effect to this approach, including signing any associated documentation, correspondence or agreements required to support council's participation. Do I have a second? Councillor Fox, thank you very much. So it's on the table, thank you. So I have prepared a little statement which probably might repeat some of the words that have already been spoken both by Ashley and the Chief Executive. But today is not about a decision that gets us to our destination on this journey of amalgamation. But using the travel analogy in this case, it is very appropriate. The decision today will get us to the airport, get our bags checked in and about to receive our boarding pass. There has been no doubt that the preparatory work, the independent analysis, the community engagement, the workshops, this comprehensive and well-compiled report has enabled us to get to a place that we might not have thought was possible 86 days ago. And I do want to acknowledge all those that have played a part in getting us to this position today. The time frame has been ridiculous, but the amount of work that has gone into this report and the quality of it is a credit to you all. There have been numerous conversations that have gone on, the ones that you have all had, the many that I have had with local government colleagues and community that have occurred in this 86-day period. They put us, I believe, in a position where we can confidently board the plane, settle into our seats, put our seatbelts on and get ready for the flight ahead. It is easy to say no to a proposal like this. Sometimes it is an automatic reaction, especially when you don't have much detail to work on. So I want to congratulate those community members who responded to our consultation on this by overwhelmingly, and that 80% supported some sort of amalgamation. I think it speaks to many good things about our community. As foreshadowed, I am recommending that we support option 7, a Palmerston North and Horowhenua front foot approach. As you are all aware, I've been upfront through this process and stated that I did have an appetite to explore amalgamation and that my preference was for an entity that comprised Kapiti, ourselves and Palmerston North City. I believe that makeup would strategically have been a good fit for the Horowhenua. And I do want to acknowledge and thank the Wellington Mineral Forum for allowing us the opportunity to be part of their discussions. It has been a valuable exercise for us to understand the dynamics of the wider region, and while we have indicated to the Wellington region that we are unlikely to partner with them, it has helped significantly with us being able to compare the different models available. We had always been upfront with the Wellington Forum that any partnership with them would very much depend on what Kapiti decided. And as these conversations have gone on, though, I have been less enamoured with the approach from Kapiti. They have been reluctant to signal any appetite or enthusiasm for this model, or any model for that matter. And after our experience through the establishment of the water entity, I certainly don't want to propose a model that might include a district that is not willing to partner with us, or there be a risk of them not supporting our preferred option. At this stage, neither do I want to drag any of our Horizons colleagues into a partnership that they are not supportive of. I think that might happen mid-flight, either by choice or by direction. In the coming years, we will have to wait and see how that pans out. This option, though, leaves the door open for other willing parties to join us if they so desire. As this report states, option 7 is founded on the long-standing relationship between Horowhenua and Palmerston North. It recognises the communities of interest and the connections that already exist in many parts of our lives. I also want to be absolutely clear about what this decision is and what it is not. Today, we are not signing off a new model of local government. What we are doing is signalling to our intent to front-foot a process of change that is already underway. We are choosing to engage early to help shape the conversation and to ensure that Horowhenua has a strong voice in whatever proposals emerge. And there will be further opportunities to assess the evidence and engage with our community to ensure any proposals are in the best interests of this district. There has been some talk about whether this front-foot approach is a proposal that the government is seeking, and that is not a detailed Head Start proposal, nor is it a backstop proposal. And the criteria that the government stipulated, supporting a new planning system, simpler local governance, economies of scale, maintenance of local voice and deliverability. Have we got a proposal that meets those criteria? Not yet. Do we want to be directed what we do in a backstop process? Certainly not. The signal that a front-foot proposal sends is very much that we want to be part of what the government is seeking, that we do see benefits long-term for our community in partnering with like-minded districts. There will be a lot more to be done through the flight before we land at our destination. So today's decision is about leadership. It says that we are prepared to participate and to help design our future rather than wait for it to be designed for us. Horowhenua has built a reputation as a district that is prepared to engage constructively, work collaboratively, and focus on solutions rather than simply identify problems. We have demonstrated that we can work constructively and positively, not only with our own community, but also alongside our neighbours, and be prepared to look beyond our boundaries when it is in the interest of our community. I do believe that reputation has value and will be seen positively, not just in this conversation, but also in those future conversations around infrastructure investment, regional deals, economic development, transport, health, and dare I say it, roading. It is also a lot more than just a decision to participate. It is about taking the responsibility to ensure that future generations inherit a system of local government that is financially sustainable, democratically accountable, and capable of delivering the services that our communities deserve and expect. We have talked as a table about being future fit, being brave. Now is the time to demonstrate that. And even if you are a little anxious about flying or not certain about the destination or how we are going to get there, we must be on the plane. If reform is coming, and all the indications suggest it is, then I want to ensure that Horowhenua is being one of the pilots that is flying the plane and not just having the ground crew direct us where to go when we land. So I seek your support on the options that I have put in front of you. Thank you. Councillor Rolson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm supporting this for slightly different reasons. I believe the long-term transition costs heed us to take into consideration regional boundaries. I think that everything that you've said is valid, except that I've never taken up parachuting and I really don't want to get on the plane with a parachute. So it's really quite good that we're not making formal decisions, and so I align it more with Councillor Jennings' dancing and dating, and the fact that we're at the almost second date stage, and we'll proceed to see how it goes from there. To me, there is more significant benefits and savings in the long term by us going north rather than going south. So I am not in support of anything to the south. If Kapiti wants to join us in the future, that's their decision. But I'm certainly not of the belief that we should be in the Greater Wellington region.
Councillor Ross.
Cool. I haven't got a plane ticket, and I don't think I'm in the dating realm with Nola either. So, hey, look, leadership in local government means putting ratepayers ahead of self-preservation, and right now too many councils are failing that test in my eyes. The Head Start process allowing shared services, mergers, efficient reviews, etc. These conversations keep stalling because people seem to be trying to protect their patch, not deliver outcomes. It's the turkeys waiting for Christmas problem. Asking people to champion change that threatens their own role really works, no matter how well intended they are. Real leadership means asking the uncomfortable questions. Are we here to build a CV or to serve the community that funds us? Success shouldn't be measured by how irresponsible you've made yourself, but by how much better off ratepayers are when you're gone. If my legacy is leaner, more efficient, more affordable, more content community, and no job is left for me, that's a win, not a failure in my eyes. Councils need leaders willing to work themselves out of a job. Anything less is rearranging deck chairs to keep your seat. I support option 7, but personally would have gone one step closer to option 6, but understand as a council we're probably not there. Just touching also, I don't believe signing an MOU, this will come later, whatsoever is really going to add any value apart from making a few councils feel good about themselves. Are we going to be at the table or are we on the menu? This is a real question here for me.
Councillor Mitchell-Kunta.
Thank you, Your Worship. Firstly, I just want to acknowledge the incredible amount of work that our council staff and our CE has given us over this period of time. It's truly been one of the biggest pieces I've had to work on in my short period of time around council. And I also want to acknowledge all of our councillors around this table and across New Zealand, because we've been put in a really tight situation and everyone has just put their head down and worked really hard. Reform of this scale cannot be driven by numbers alone. It requires meaningful engagement and a genuine understanding of our communities, their aspirations, priorities, and concerns. While we've received extensive information about governance structures and financial models, I don't believe we've yet had enough opportunity as elected members to actually sit down with our counterparts from Palmerston North and other councils to understand whether our communities share the same priorities and vision for the future. If we're considering a shared future, we first need to understand whether we share the same direction. My decision must be based not only on financial information, but what is best for the people I represent. Cost of living, housing affordability, food security, and financial security remain significant issues in Horowhenua, and I'm not yet satisfied that we have enough information about the transition costs, long-term financial impacts, or how different amalgamation options would actually affect our community. I also want to acknowledge the importance of iwi in this conversation. Any reform of local government must recognise the unique relationship between iwi, local government, and the Crown under Te Tiriti o Waitangi. At this stage, I don't have enough information to understand how iwi and hapu will be represented within any future governance model, how existing relationships and partnerships will be maintained, or whether their ability to influence decisions affecting their whenua, taonga, and communities will be strengthened or diminished. These are fundamental questions that deserve careful consideration before I can support significant structural change. I need confidence that iwi have been meaningfully engaged, that their aspirations have been heard, and that any future arrangements provide clear, enduring opportunities for partnership and decision-making. Good reform requires understanding people and relationships, not just organisational structures and financial models. I also do not believe waiting for the government's backstop is the right approach. Reform is coming, and we should be actively involved in shaping our future rather than leaving those decisions entirely to central government. Equally, I'm not prepared to commit a structural change simply because it allows us to move first. One of my greatest concerns is protecting local democracy. A promise of a strong local voice is not enough if local boards or community councils or whatever the end may be do not have statutory powers, protected funding, meaningful decision-making authority and clear accountability. Horowhenua deserves more than a consultative role. For these reasons, I believe there is one sensible pathway before us. Option 7, to continue exploring a more focused front foot proposal with Palmerston North if the evidence demonstrates that it delivers stronger outcomes for Horowhenua. At this stage, I do not support committing to an unconditional Head Start proposal until we have greater certainty around costs, representation, statutory local powers, iwi partnerships, community support, and long-term financial impacts. For me, this is about making an informed decision, not a rushed one. Good reform is about strengthening local democracy, building public trust, respecting our treaty relationships, and delivering better outcomes for the communities that we serve.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like Councillor Mitchell-Kutab, I would like to also acknowledge the significant amount of work that has gone in getting us to this point today. It's been a genuinely challenging process undertaken within an extraordinarily compressed time frame. And so I want to acknowledge the Chief Executive and her team, Morrison Lowe, our partners, neighbouring councils, community members, and obviously this table for the time and effort that's gone into putting all this work together. And I think whatever decision we make today, we can be confident that we've, I think, right-sized the process and that it's a defensible one in the time that's been made available to us. And it's been a genuine attempt to understand the opportunities and also potential trade-offs. Given the scale and importance of the, I guess, direction-setting decision we're making today, I do have some speaking notes to structure my thoughts, make sure I don't go too far off topic. To Councillor Fox's disappointment, I won't be using any dating or romantic analogies though, so But I have been doing a bit of reflecting on what is actually happening across the sector, across New Zealand, and there's about 750 elected members, just like us, sitting around council tables this week, last week, making decisions on this topic. And they're some of the biggest decisions that their communities will potentially face for many years, and potentially even decades. And it's been really fascinating to watch all those different approaches emerge. And so some councils have been guided largely by what the communities have told them. But we've got to recognise that in many cases, like us, those views have been gathered through quite small sample sizes. Some councils have taken very firm political positions against reform in any form right from the outset. Others have decided that if change is inevitable, that they'd rather be able to say amalgamation was done to them rather than accept responsibility for helping shape it. And obviously I respect every other council and councillor's right to make those decisions, but I don't think that's the correct leadership approach, and Councillor Olsen explained that perfectly. And that's because leadership requires us to acknowledge some uncomfortable realities sometimes, and again, Councillor Olsen articulated that nicely. The easiest decision for us would be to do nothing, and the most politically comfortable decision might be to oppose reform, as other councils have done. But we know change is coming, and the government's been absolutely clear that there is that change coming, and that we either need to participate in helping shape that reform in some form, or will ultimately be subject to that backstop process. The real question isn't really about whether reform happens, it's about how we choose to respond to it. And so for me, the responsible governance approach means positioning Horowhenua to influence its future rather than simply waiting for others to determine it. I think that's good governance for us. Turning to the options, I don't believe we are ready to submit a Head Start proposal, and that's partly because some of the options should simply be ruled out, or that because they don't work for us, but other realistic options available to us have largely been dictated to us by other decisions of other councils, neighbouring councils, and that's was always a risk with this model and this process, and I'm sure the government understands that. But the point is that we can't build an amalgamation proposal or pathway by ourselves. We need willing partners. And long before these reforms were announced, I've always thought that a unitary authority was the right direction, and combining those regional and territorial functions to me makes sense. But it's always the question hasn't really been about, is a unitary authority our future? It's kind of what's the right geography, what's the right scale. And so I was obviously interested in a Horowhenua Kapiti working closely together. We've talked about that around this table before, even before these reforms were on the table. And I was also quite interested in looking at what a rural grouping of councils centred around Palmerston North could look like. They have some strategic merit. But unfortunately, our neighbours have made their own decisions, and we need to respect those decisions. But it means that potentially workable options are off the table. And I want to be clear that my comments about Kapiti shouldn't be interpreted as any lack of enthusiasm for the Palmerston North option, but because option 7 is the most viable option on the table. But there's always a question, right, around whether what is a council like us, which is a provincial rural council, whether that's a right fit going with a large metro city council. And that's absolutely a legitimate question to ask. But I think the starting point for me is that Palmerston North has absolutely been a constructive partner. We're already demonstrating that through Central District's water, that we can work together, and that's been working well. Even though we're at the beginning of that relationship, it's constructive. So I also just so option 7 for me makes sense because it's about continuing those conversations with Palmerston North to look at and gives us the opportunity to think about what are the governance arrangements that protect Horowhenua's voice while also building that stronger organisational capability and getting the service scope fit for purpose. I do want to make one observation about the kapiti process. Like the mayor, I'm not particularly impressed with where that's landed. For many years, we have signalled an openness to work with more closely with kapiti, and we did that during the water reform discussions, and we've, I think, attempted to do that again through these discussions. But I think the response has generally been one of very limited interest or appetite from kapiti to really genuinely explore a Horowhenua kapiti partnership. That's disappointing, but I guess it's just the reality of the situation. What did surprise me was seeing Horowhenua effectively appear within a broader Wellington proposal at the 11th hour, despite Horowhenua not being meaningfully involved in developing that model. And essentially that was about Horowhenua being dragged in to a Wellington Regional Council sub-model without any, I guess, regard to whether that's the right fit for us, acknowledging that we currently exist within a Horizon Regional Council model. That's not how enduring governance relationships should be developed, and that's because partnerships are developed through mutual trust, mutual interest, mutual respect, and joint design. They can't be built on one partner just going away and designing it without reference to the other. So if Horowhenua is going to become part of any future governance arrangement with kapiti, then we should have absolutely been sitting around the table helping design that arrangement from the outset. To me, that proposal that kapiti put forward appeared to be driven more by preserving kapiti's position within the Wellington discussions than a genuine joint exploration of what might provide the most sustainable long-term governance model for both districts. So just for me, it doesn't provide any sound basis for Horowhenua to support a kapiti-centric option because, one, they're only framed as Head Start proposals. We're not ready for that, but also for the reasons I've outlined above. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with option 7. And for other reason, for what other people have said, it just, to me, it acknowledges that we're not prepared to sit back and wait for the government to determine our future, but it keeps the conversations alive, keeps the opportunities alive, it keeps it open for us to have those conversations around the representation arrangements and get that right. Most importantly, it allows us to keep leading rather than reacting, and I absolutely don't see option 7 as sitting on the fence. It's about momentum. It's recognising that we've set ourselves on a pathway, on a track. We're not going too fast, but we're signalling that willingness and openness. I also just wanted to flag that I am not in favour of option 8 with the MOU. That just has no interest to me at all. So for me, it's option 7 is the correct way forward. And thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Mayor Bernie, and I may be a little brief, we'll see, but I too want to begin by acknowledging the amount of work that's gone into this. I'd like to acknowledge you, Mayor Bernie, because I know that you have taken a leadership role as Mayor and representing us as elected members, so I'd just like to acknowledge that and acknowledge that we talk about this as reforms, but I also think it's like all of our roles are being restructured in a way, so you're always invited to be part of the conversation in a restructure, but I want to acknowledge the leadership of our CE and officers of council, the balance, the information, the objectivity of reporting, and indeed their professionalism and leadership as officers, because they've had to pivot quite quickly. We were in a process of understanding what reform looked like when this came to us on the table, so just acknowledging that the community have come along with us in this conversation. And the topic is simplifying local government, but it seems that it's not a simple process to simplify local government. It's very complex. Back in February, we were broadly in support of a simplified local government model, and we commented that we would support a model that could benefit our communities. That's been an important theme the whole way through. We had a broad statement of position that we wanted to ensure that systems were about best results for our ratepayers. So, based on the information at hand, I will be supporting option 7. The evidence before us shows that none of the options are perfect. We've heard that in all the conversations today. But I was not keen to be a council that was on the menu as an afterthought for Wellington, simply because I don't believe it will work for us. In the Morrison Lowe report, option 6 indicated that there could be put the strongest weight on a northern relationship. And we have seen and we've heard today that we have been able to demonstrate a strong relationship with Palmerston North through CDW. And we've been able to hold our own even as a smaller council in that relationship. So it makes sense that we're not ready. 4 days is not time to get a Head Start proposal ready. You'll be relieved to hear that that's how I feel. But I think it's important that we show leadership. I think it's important that we give an indication, knowing that change is coming, that we have given careful consideration to how we can consider best outcomes for our ratepayers. I say that with an edge of wanting to ensure that in this next part of the process we take time to consider some of those things that have been raised today, and that is the importance of how leadership and democracy for this district is shaped for the future, and that we do not lose the voice of Horowhenua in any partnership that we might enter into or any amalgamation decision. So for me that's incredibly important, all of those considerations for our ratepayers, but the importance of representation arrangements going forward will be a conversation that we have to keep having. So I am supporting option 7, and we got on this journey back in October, not sure of what our destination would be, and well, we thought we had a destination in mind, which was, working for our district, but now we're heading somewhere completely different. So yeah, that's where I sit today.
Thank you. Councillor Young.
Thank you. Also like to thank officers and staff for all their hard work. Also like to thank the community who thought stopping me at the supermarket was a great idea and got dragged into amalgamation talks. Also love the fact that last week I was at the Young Elected Members Hui and was told off for talking too much amalgamation. But I was thankful for the opportunity to talk to the likes of the Kapiti councillors that were there and really pick their brains. Was also picking the brains of all the local councillors in our regions and appreciating them for showing their articles and giving me their feedback on all their amalgamation headaches that they were having. What I got out of it was, really that we're here to harness change rather than fear it. The future of local government will not simply be shaped by change, but by those willing to lead it. For us in Horowhenua, option 7 is our way to front foot this, and I'll be supporting it.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to use the words good faith as I talk to this proposition, and I put the cards on the table. Option 7 is also the way forward for me, regrettably, and I acknowledge the comments made by Councillor Jennings about the what-ifs in the past, about the unitary model and how that could have been. That's history, that was then, this is now. In terms of option 7, I guess my real deep concern is that is not on the menu. The government gave us 2 options. They gave us Head Start or they gave us Backstop. They used phrases like do it yourselves or we will do it to you. Nowhere in that mix was the front foot model. So this is something new, and it carries with it the risk that central government will say, why are you even talking to us, because those were not the terms of engagement that we identified as central government that you must work to. That aside, for me it's the only option because I think it has the potential to create a win-win. Where I felt regret in the past that there doesn't seem to have been a sense of good faith and engagement from government and the central government in this process, I'd like us to actually invite them to look at proposals made in good faith back to them. It's never too late to say to central government, how about a proposition which was not within your scope but which could work? We're the local voice of our communities. 80% of people said they want to look at some form of amalgamation. We want to do that on behalf of our community, but we simply cannot do it in the time available and under the terms of engagement that you've given to us. And that's not about criticism. Well, it's about constructive criticism, about saying, look, hold on, it's never too late to work together to get things right. Continuing the theme of good faith, there are 432 pages of evidence that we have worked in good faith. When we look at the Morrison Lowe report, the extraordinary depth of analysis and advice in that, when we look at the work done by officers, and I'm going to join every other councillor in applauding the work done by this local authority. We're one of the small ones in New Zealand, but I wonder if there's any other council, big or small, that has shown the commitment, the leadership and the amount of work that we put into doing this job as thoroughly and robustly as we can on behalf of our community. So I thank officers, and I think the quality of that advice was encapsulated by the extraordinarily capable executive summary which Ashley gave at the table. Good faith, we've done the work. And Mr. Mayor, I want to compliment you on your address, the leadership you showed in your address kicking off the discussion today. If you want a definition of statesmanship, that was contained in what you said. Put it on repeat, listen again to a mayor who is saying on behalf of the community to central government, we really want to work with you, we want to get things right, and we have proven that we've done everything possible to make an informed decision. So I do want to personally thank you for what you have said. The front foot proposal recognises that we simply need more time, that there is the potential for our community, for our district, to form relationships with other like-minded authorities over time, but we need time to get it right. And doesn't central government also want to get it right? They want to get it right too. The risks, the legacy risks for this government, if they do not work with us to make sure there's an enduring solution, the risks to their reputation are going to be staggering. Let's try to get it right. Let's do the partnership model and try to get it right. So that is my plea to central government. Let's create a win-win, give us time, understand that there is a third way that you identified in your initial speech, Mr. Mayor. There is a third way, there is the possibility to get it right. Good faith.
Councillor Grimstone.
Firstly, I wanted to acknowledge the work of officers. If I use a sporting analogy, this council was already setting up to think about the future and the role, and we're well and truly down the road of training for a half marathon. 90 days ago, essentially, the government turned it into a 100-metre sprint, and the team have worked really hard with their consultants to put options in front of the table for us to discuss today. The community has told us, and they've had a clear say. We've had lots of informal conversations that aren't captured in a survey, but we did receive 652 surveys that largely supported us talking to our friends to the north and to the south about what our future options look like. Only 5% said leave it to the government to sort out. To me, that feedback supports taking a proactive approach. Our community is telling us they want us to engage in the discussion, exploring opportunities and helping shape the future, rather than sitting on the sidelines waiting for others to decide for us. The need for local government reform is clear, and I think it is widely recognised. However, my support does not mean I support rushing to an outcome that enhances a government's re-election campaign or binds us to a decision that impacts on the voice of the residents of Horowhenua for generations to come. I do have concerns about the reform process. The timeframe has always and has proven to be tight for the decision of this scale, and there are multiple other reforms occurring simultaneously. Good governance relies upon clear information, robust analysis, meaningful engagement, and I believe there is still work to be done before communities can have full confidence on what future arrangements may look like. What I like about option 7 is that it does strike a balance between leadership and flexibility. It does not commit Horowhenua to a unitary authority, amalgamation, or any specific governance model today. Instead, it gives us a seat at the table or a plane ticket and allows us to shape the discussion rather than simply to react to decisions by others or being viewed as somebody else's leftovers. Palmerston North Airport is a logical starting point for these conversations. We already have strong connections through employment, education, healthcare, transport, freight, economic activity. These are well-established communities of interest that provide a credible foundation for exploring further opportunities. At the same time, this does keep the door open to broader regional conversations as they evolve. In particular, I remain focused on the question of local voice. Communities need more than representation on paper. They need genuine influence in decision making. Whatever governance models may emerge in the future, Horowhenua must have a strong and effective voice, not a whisper. Our communities need to be able to advocate clearly and confidently for the outcomes that matter to them. That is another reason that I believe option 7 is the right approach. By being involved from the outset, we place ourselves in a stronger position to influence future proposals and ensure that local representation, community identity, and democratic accountability remain central to the discussion. Ultimately, this is the option about keeping our options open, remaining actively engaged, and ensuring Horowhenua helps shape its future, rather than having it shaped for it.
Councillor Gray, thank you. Can you hear us, Morgan?
Yes, I can. Have you got me?
Thank you.
I'd just like to firstly acknowledge the work of council officers at Morrison Lowe. They've put a tremendous amount of work into the decision-making process. I'd also like to congratulate my fellow councillors at HDC and PNCC for having the courage to actually grab this with both hands and try and make a fist of it. This stuff's not easy. Feedback that I've received through the community really is at this cycle in the at this stage in the economic cycle is that people are really watching their bottom lines. The only risk with this is that we don't see some more government reform in relation to how local government is funded, we could just create a bigger monster that gobbles up more resources and money and really doesn't change that for people's bottom lines. That's my concern, and I would implore the government at the same time as we go into the structural reform to look at the underlying drivers that fund local government and what we can do in that space to make it more affordable and sustainable going forward. The only option on the table for me is option number 7. We have good enduring relationships with PNCC. I think we'd be naive to suggest that that's where it will land. I have a strong feeling that we will do a lot of hard work together and get the bones of the plane up in the air, and the rest of the parts will be bolted to it. But I implore everyone that's been involved in this process, and thank you for your hard work.
Thank you. Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a sad day. We have been coerced into going along with a government who is held bent on disestablishing our local democracy. There are no good options here. Option 7, well, there are no good choices. However, option 7 is probably the best of a bad bunch. But this isn't about, for me, about whether we go for Head Start or we go into backstop. That's just the process. This is about an assault on our local democracy itself. And that's what amalgamation will do. It will dilute and diminish our ratepayers' ability to take part in that democracy. I have no doubt of that. In terms of money, I doubt very much it will save any ratepayer a single cent. So today, democracy, as much as I believe life, there's probably many, many shades of grey. When it comes to democracy, it's black and white. You either have it or you don't. So as far as I'm concerned, the answer is no. I won't support this, not because it's not the best of a bad bunch, because I will support democracy itself.
Thank you. Councillor Keating.
E mihi ana ki ngā kāhui maunga o Remutaka, o Tararua, o Ruahine. E mihi ana hoki ki ngā iwi, ngā titoa, te atiawa, raukawa, te au ki te tonga, mua upoko, rangitāne, Ngāti Apa, Ngāti Kauwhata, koutou katoa, ngā karanga hapu, ngā karanga iwi o tēnei rohe. Mai miri a te kākara ki whitireia, tēnā koutou. The Manawatu awa that connects us, our whakapapa, our history, with some of the other councils that we may be going into partnership with. Feedback that I've had with not just the Meranui ward, but with iwi as well as attending the Te Maruata conference last week. It was good to engage with other Māori elected members within these councils and to get feedback from them. From the iwi perspective, I guess, it made sense to go north because the Manawatu River connects us. Palmerston North City Council, Manawatu Council, Ngāti Kauwhata, Rangitāne, Tararua, over the hill. Wherever we may go, I do support that we go with PNCC and any other councils that want to also partner with us or be part of that amalgamation. Option 7, I tautoko and support option 7 based on what everyone has talked about today. Katrina, I want to just acknowledge you and in regards to the iwi relationships, because that's really important. That's for iwi our voice slowly, the attempt for us to be, our voice to be diminished at central government is, what's the word? I'll use a Māori word, kino. Whakaiti tangata. It tramples on our mana as iwi, as tangata whenua in this country. But I also want to acknowledge tangata tiriti who have also supported tangata whenua in these types of, for this amalgamation. So yeah, that's, I also want to acknowledge the Miranui ward, the Shannon community, who came along to a Head Start session. I call it a fast track because that's what it was. It caused confusion for our people, that we were having to front up and make decisions based on what central government are doing there. So therefore I tautoko option 7. I also want to just remind our whānau out there, you have until tomorrow, August the 6th, to, if you're not on the Māori roll, change over whānau, because it gives Māori, it gives iwi a bigger voice where it matters. Tēnā koutou katoa.
Kia ora, thanks, Lani. All right, no one else? I can see Councillor Horowhenua struggling to be here anyway. All right, so I'm going to not repeat those recommendations. I'm going to put those recommendations A, B, E and F as put earlier. All those in favour? Against? Against? Noted. Thank you. Appreciate that. And I do want to acknowledge the commentary that's been given today. Well, everyone had different nuances and bits to their korero. You all came to pretty much the same conclusion, which I think speaks volumes for the way that we have managed this process. While everyone's been very congratulatory of the officers, and we have been very fortunate to receive the information and backing that we've had, I do want to acknowledge the work that you have done in coming to that conclusion today, because it's, as been mentioned, it's not easy. And I acknowledge the concerns that we all have around amalgamation. None of us know what's going to end, how this is going to end up, and there will be a lot more conversations to have. It will be interesting to see how the government react to what is going to be in front of them from the weekend onwards. We've got a little bit of a space before we do hear the reaction. We know there's an election in 100 days. We may need to pivot again, as we've had to do very recently as well. But it is a positive step forward, and I think it certainly puts Horowhenua in a great position to be able to deal with anything that is thrown at us. And I'm confident that, having dealt with this as well as we have, that any other reason to have to pivot again will be managed and considered well. We've got a huge amount of work in front of us after today. We've still got revocation hanging over our head. We've still got town centre. We've still got O2NL. We've still got to think about transition to CDW. There's other reforms on top of it as well coming. And on top of that, we've got to develop a long-term plan. So, don't for one moment think that this is any decision that we've made today is going to mean that we're not going to have to do any of that work. That work will continue. But I am confident that us being able to hopefully influence our own destiny will make a big difference. And I've already had a text from the Mayor of Palmerston North, and he's
confirm that they are keen to continue the conversation that we've started, which is great news. All right, we might take a 5-minute break and come back and deal with the rest of the items shortly.
start again. So we're now moving to business as usual. Item number 6.2. Oh, sorry, I had, yes, thank you for reminding me. There were a couple of recommendations that we haven't dealt with from the previous item, and I know Councillor Jennings wants to raise what he alluded to earlier.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I think that for completeness, we probably do need to move recommendations H and I in the report. Although they read as if they're part of the backstop option, I think that's useful to move them, unless the Chief Executive has contrary advice. And then I would be proposing to move a further motion J, which relates to the letter. So I don't know if you want to do those in separate blocks. So perhaps if I move H and I, and
right, seconded by Deputy Mayor Allen, so it's on the table.
I think they're pretty self-explanatory,
yes.
So I don't need to discuss them. Yep.
Everyone in agreement? I'll put those recommendations. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. And recommendation J?
Recommendation J. So this, Mr. Mayor, is I'll read it. So I move that Council notes that the front foot option 7 letter will be amended to clearly state Palmerston North's initial support for investigating a sub-regional body that reflects a cohesive and coherent catchment of the Manawatu Awa, with a focus on including neighbouring Manawatu and Horowhenua District Councils, in comparison to Horowhenua, who simply remain open to working with those who are willing. And so I can talk to that if you'd like me to.
But still include the reference to the Manawatu Awa. Is you're comfortable with that piece? It's just the naming of the two councils?
So I think what we're trying to say here is that, as I understand it, Palmerston North City Council has now endorsed option 7, like we have, but there were some further amendments or motions put by their table that amends the draft letter that's part of our package. And so what this motion is doing is simply saying they've said that they want to specifically name other councils. I think as a Horowhenua District Council, we don't want to do that. We're simply saying we're open to working with those who are willing, and we don't want to drag other councils into it because we've just criticised other people for doing that very thing. So we're just simply saying we're open to working with those who are willing. So this would just this motion would have the impact of essentially a paragraph being inserted and describing the different approaches between PNCC and HDC on this particular topic.
Deputy Mayor Allen, you comfortable with that approach?
I understand the sentiment, but I think we need to actually see the actual wording. So just take a moment to do that. Yeah. Do you need a pro forma second just to get on the table? On second.
Well, let's just get on the table. Right, so recommendation J reads that Council notes that the front foot option 7 letter will be amended to clearly state Palmerston North's initial support for investigating a sub-regional body that reflects a cohesive and coherent catchment of the Manawatu Awa, with a focus on including neighbouring Manawatu and Horowhenua District Councils, in comparison to Horowhenua, who simply remain open to working with those who are willing. Is that how you're happy to second that? Any further discussion? Councillor Jennings.
So, Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, so the wording in there about the initial support for investigating a sub-regional body right up to end of councils is essentially the wording that PNCC and land on. So we are simply reflecting back what change they have agreed to make, and we're just acknowledging that we don't want to specifically name those other councils, just be open to working with those who are willing.
Councillor Fox.
Thank you, Mayor. I had made a comment that when Councillor Jennings was drafting this, that I'm just a tad concerned right at the end of the sentence that it doesn't future-proof it, because taking it as willing as at this moment, as it willing in the future. That's the only point that I had about that. Otherwise, I'm very happy and support of it. I can live with it. It's just I wondered if there's any, through me at the CE, any legality issues that might be interpreted for at this point in time versus in the future.
Through your worship, what I'd comment on is that if this motion was to be supported by the table, it's in context of the previous decisions that you've just made. And as I've understood option 7, the Palms North and Horowhenua front foot approach, there is modelling that sits behind that around potential options on who some willing partners might be, but it has rolled out a broader partnership in terms of one unitary in Horizon. So if your concern, Councillor Fox, is that it kind of means anyone who wants to, my advice to the table is I think that the decisions you've made ahead of considering this is quite clear about the frame in which who those willing partners might be.
I'll put that recommendation. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Thanks for tidying everything up there. All right, so now we move to 6.2, which is the budget 2026-27 adjustments. And thank you, Alison. I'll just move that we receive and note this report. Seconded by Deputy Mayor Allen. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you, Alison.
Morena koutou. So this report seeks Council's approval for the 2026-27 budget adjustments following completion of the last financial year. Each year we review unspent budgets to determine what funding is still required to complete approved work, what needs updating to reflect decisions made during the year, and what can be released. We've brought this report forward this year so the approved changes can be incorporated into our financial system and reflected in reporting from the beginning of the financial year. The key message is that these adjustments are largely about timing, not expanding Council's work programme. Most relate to projects already approved but delayed due to procurement, contractor availability, sequencing or dependencies on other parties. The proposed adjustments comprise $13.86 million of capital carry forwards, $2.3 million of other capital adjustments, bringing the total capital adjustments to $16.16 million, and $1.67 million of operational adjustments, including $558,000 of operational carry forwards. In total, the proposed additions to the 2026-27 budget are $17.83 million. The approved capital program last year was $52.58 million, with $28.85 million spent by year end. Of the remaining approximately $24 million, $13.86 million is recommended to be carried forward, while $9.87 million is no longer required and will be released. The larger adjustments relate to projects such as the Levin Town Centre Program, the Levin Wastewater Treatment Plant headworks, Civic Building Roof and HVAC works, Waikawa Beach Vehicle Accessway, Dog Pound refurbishment and Taraika infrastructure. I won't step through each project as the detail, funding source and rationale are included in Appendix A. The proposed operational adjustments total $1.67 million, with $3.18 million of remaining operational budget not carried forward. These adjustments primarily relate to the deferred altitude implementation, which is our ERP, financing costs associated with debt-funded carry-forwards, legal support, the objective build implementation, and Central District's Waters Shareholder Committee costs, and other approved initiatives. Appendix B also includes a $40,000 reduction in waste minimisation reserve funding, reflecting that the education program can be delivered with existing resources. This is a change in funding source rather than additional expenditure. From a debt perspective, Council closed the year with $206 million of external debt, compared to the budgeted $264 million, so around $58 million lower than anticipated. And if approved, approximately $17 million of that available debt capacity will fund the debt-funded project adjustments, leaving around $41 million of remaining headroom against annual plan assumptions. The associated interest costs have been provided for using the annual plan assumption of 3.8%, and borrowing will continue to be drawn only as expenditure occurs. The revised program remains comfortably within Council's borrowing limits at this stage. From a depreciation perspective, there's also a timing impact on depreciation because it only begins once assets are completed and capitalised. So delayed projects reduce depreciation expense in the short term. But any increase resulting from the annual report audit and asset revaluations is expected to be largely offset by these delays, and so we're not expecting that to materially affect the 2026-27 budget or Council's plan to fully fund depreciation from 2027-28. In closing, these adjustments ensure the 2026-27 budget reflects when approved work will actually be delivered, while releasing funding that is no longer required and incorporating decisions made since the annual plan was adopted. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Alison. Any questions? I do have one. Sorry, Alison. Sorry, can't get away with that. I'm curious about the budget's not required. I mean, there's over $12 million when you combine capital and operational spend. So, what have we decided? Have we decided not to do some stuff, or what's the story?
Through you, Your Worship, I haven't actually seen the items that were not put forward for carry forward. So the process has been that staff look at what is in flight, and that is what generates the carry forwards. The assumption is that everything else can be reforecast out into future years because they're not intending to deliver it in the 26-27 financial year.
Right.
But if you would like to see that detail, I can pull that together and distribute it by way of email, something like that.
Well, I think when we do our long-term plan and things like that, they'll become obvious. But it would be good if they were, noted that we were going to do these and now moving them out to other years for sure. Yeah. Councillor Mason.
Thanks, Mayor Burney. Yes, I would like to see what that looks like, what the $9 million that's not required plus the additional that makes it up to $12 million, because I think it is important when we're going into long-term planning. I'd like to understand what we committed to spend and then decided wasn't necessary.
Thank you. All right, so recommendations are B, C and D. The Council approved the capital budget adjustments outlined in Appendix A totalling $16,162,263. That Council approved the operational budget adjustments outlined in Appendix B totalling $1,672,275. That Council note that the majority of the proposed budget adjustments relate to the timing of expenditure and do not represent additional program commitments beyond those previously approved by Council. Seconded by Councillor Grimstone. Any further discussion? I'll put those recommendations. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. All right, so now that is the end of our open agenda. I'm now going to move recommendation that we exclude the public from the following parts of the proceedings of this meeting to discuss C1, which is the living wage direction. seconded by Councillor Young. Thank you. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. All right, so just while Alice turns off the